Back in the 1990s, when the music scene in Hong Kong was booming and everything smelled like opportunity, I was quietly building a legacy behind the curtain. I had inherited my mother Isabel Bennett's perfect pitch and gift for melody. She had been the queen of pop in her time, and though she had passed on early, her influence lived in me like blood through my veins. I wrote song after song in the shadows, pouring my soul into melodies that would soon be sung by someone else. That someone was Ethan Morgan, my childhood friend from a sleepy little fishing town. We grew up together, but while he chased bright lights and stage dreams, I stayed back, honing every note and lyric, working with my mother to help him succeed without ever asking for credit. By the time I moved back to the city, Ethan was a rising star and the man I loved in silence. I didn't ask for much, just one moment to tell him that everything he had was also built by me. But before I could say a word, he showed up with Nina Collins, the girl he used to call his little sweetheart, now wrapped around his arm in a designer dress he never could have afforded without my help. Nina cried crocodile tears, claiming I bullied her when we were kids, and Ethan, in all his self-righteous glory, threw me into a mental hospital without a shred of proof. Not just that, to push me off the rooftop when I confronted him. "You're the reason Nina and I were separated," he snapped, his voice full of disgust. "Everything I have now, I earned myself. You're nothing." I can still feel the wind howling in my ears when I fell. Rage twisted inside me, and I grabbed his wrist, pulling him down with me, but before anything could land, I opened my eyes and I was back in 1990, just like that. Reborn. Same world, same people, new rules. No hesitation this time. I gathered every single song I had written for him, the ones that had made him a household name in the old timeline, and handed them all to his rival, Ryan Carter, a quiet but terrifyingly talented vocalist who never got his big break in my last life. Ethan didn't even know I was back in the city. He showed up months later, already married to Nina, parading her around like a prize. When I walked into the Grand Star KTV banquet hall that day, I knew I would see him again. And there he was, hand in hand with Nina in matching couple outfits like this was some teenage prom. The flashing lights hit their faces just right, and it made me sick how perfect they looked, perfectly fake. But the real kicker? The moment his eyes met mine, he flinched just slightly. Like somewhere in that empty soul of his, he remembered what he did to me. Or maybe, just like me, he had been reborn too. "Clara," he said with a sigh, using that same old tone of pity wrapped in superiority. "We tortured each other in our last life. Let's not repeat that in this one. I know you still love me, but Nina and I were soulmates. We can't be separated." The nerve. I didn't say anything, because what could I say to a man who thought the universe revolved around his ego? When I didn't respond, his face twisted back to the familiar contempt he always reserved for me. "You're living a second life, and you're still just a karaoke bar waitress?" He sneered. Pathetic. I glanced down at my uniform. I'd taken the job not out of desperation, but because I liked being around raw talent and real emotion. It inspired my songwriting. But explaining that to him would be like explaining color to someone who only sees black and white. "It has nothing to do with you," I replied coldly. "You said let's move on, right? So stay out of my business." Just then, my phone buzzed. A message from Ryan popped up. "Report. Plane landed. ETA to your side in 2 hours." I smiled a little. Ethan saw that and got angry. "Clara Bennett, don't act like you've moved on. Didn't you love me like crazy in the last life?" I shot him a look and said flatly, "Yeah, and you killed me for it." He went silent. Nina came out of the restroom just in time to play her part, eyes wide with fake concern. "Oh, so you disguised yourself as a waitress just to get close to Ethan? You're still obsessed, aren't you?" Ethan's eyes lit up with realization, like a light bulb finally flickered to life. I laughed, shaking off her hand when she tried to touch me. "Is he some kind of god that I need to sneak around to be near him? Get over yourselves." Of course, Nina pulled her usual trick. She stumbled back into Ethan's arms, eyes misty, waiting for him to protect her like always. He stepped in front of her, glaring at me. "Don't even think about hurting Nina again. I'm still going to win tonight's competition, and she'll be right there beside me when I do. You'll still be nothing." I couldn't help laughing. Wow. That confidence. Are you sure you're ready to crash and burn? Just then, a crowd gathered, drawn in by Ethan's volume and bravado. Someone nearby asked, "Are you really competing tonight?" Word is Ryan Carter's going to be the guest judge. The king of songs himself. Ethan's face went pale. "What king of songs?" he muttered, then raised his voice. "I'll win tonight. I'll stand higher than anyone, even higher than that so-called king." People actually clapped for him. Some even handed over pens and paper for autographs. He lapped it up like a starving dog, completely blind to the disaster ahead. I just smiled and waited. Soon the host came out and directed attention to the display. My mother's golden microphone, the prize for tonight's winner. My heart clenched. Ethan's gaze softened too, but for all the wrong reasons. "You missed this mic too, didn't you, Clara? In our last life, he won that mic using my song. It was the only thing I let go without a fight because I thought he was family. Never again." Someone in the crowd said it should go to Ryan Carter, that only he or Queen Isabel deserved it. Ethan's face turned dark, but he smirked and stepped up to grab the mic like it already belonged to him. The host gasped. "Sir, that's the prize for the champion. I am the champion," he snapped. Everyone was too stunned to argue. I could barely breathe from the sheer audacity. "You don't deserve to touch that microphone," I said, voice low and firm. "Oh, and you do," he laughed. "A waitress?" I stared him down. "Let's see how far your ego carries you when the music stops." And just like that, the show began. The moment Ethan Morgan swaggered onto the stage, clutching the golden microphone like it was a trophy already engraved with his name, I knew I didn't even have to lift a finger. The stage would destroy him for me, just like it almost destroyed me in the past. The lights dimmed, the crowd roared, and the MC barely managed to announce the start of the competition before Ethan took center stage with the grin of someone who thought he'd already won. He didn't even bow or greet the judge. She just tilted his chin, raised the mic, and closed his eyes, soaking in the applause like he was still the megastar from our last life. But this life wasn't his end career, it was his exposure. The moment he sang the first line of the song, I heard a sharp intake of breath from the judging panel. Their smiles faded. Their pens paused. One of them glanced over at me, and our eyes met for a second too long. Ethan kept going, eyes shut like he was performing for a crowd of ghosts who still worshipped him. He didn't notice the room had changed temperature. He didn't notice the whispers in the crowd. And he definitely didn't notice the judge who stood up and raised his hand. "Stop," the man said, his voice cutting through the music like a blade. Ethan flinched, opened his eyes, and scowled. "Is there a problem?" he asked, trying to keep his composure but clearly annoyed at the interruption. "Yes," the judge snapped, flipping through his notes. "Do you know what kind of competition this is?" "Of course," Ethan said confidently. "An original music contest." The judge slammed his folder shut. "Then you should know the song you just performed was released 3 years ago. Word for word, note for note, by another artist." The entire room went silent. Ethan blinked, stunned. He stammered, "That's impossible. Who wrote this? This is my song." "Is it?" the judge said coolly. "Because we have copyright records showing it was published long before this competition, and certainly not by you." The crowd started murmuring. Some looked confused, others amused. And then Ethan made the worst mistake of his life. He pointed right at me in the audience and shouted, "Clara Bennett, this is your doing, isn't it? You sabotaged me." I didn't even flinch. I stood up, met the judge's gaze, and spoke loud and clear. "This is an original contest. The rules are very clear. All entries must be newly written and unreleased. So tell me, what trick do you think I played here?" That was when the judges recognized me. The tension shifted. Whispers turned into gasps. One judge stood up immediately, as if he had just realized he'd insulted royalty. Ethan's face turned red, then pale, then twisted with fury. "You bribed them," he spat. "You planned this. You always hated Met. His is your revenge. Are you serious right now?" I replied, barely keeping my voice even. "You plagiarized. And now you're blaming me because you got caught." That's when Nina Collins stormed onto the stage like she was auditioning for a soap opera, screaming at me, "You bitch! How dare you ruin Ethan's career? I'll beat you to death." She shoved me with both hands hard. But before she could land a second push, someone kicked her back so fast I didn't even register what happened. Suddenly, I was in Ryan Carter's arms, and Nina was crying on the floor. Ryan's face was stone cold, his voice like ice. "You stole the song my girlfriend wrote and dared to slander her?" he growled at Ethan. "Where do you get the nerve?" Ethan doubled over, clutching his stomach, gasping for breath. Nina tried to stand up, but Ryan's glare froze her in place. "Clara," he turned to me, his voice soft now. "Are you okay? Did they hurt you?" I shook my head slowly, grateful but embarrassed. Ryan was a public figure. He didn't need this mess, but he didn't care. He turned back to Ethan and Nina, fire still in his eyes. "If you ever touch her again, I'll make sure you both pay." At that moment, the entire venue exploded in whispers. "That's Ryan Carter. It's him, it's really him. He's Clara's boyfriend?" Someone dared to whisper that I looked too plain for a star like Ryan. One of the judges snapped. "Are you blind? She's the songwriter behind every hit he's ever sung." Another added, "Long time no see, Mr. Carter," like they were talking to an old legend. Ethan looked like he'd swallowed broken glass. "So it's true," he muttered. "The king of songs is you." Then he turned on me like a cornered animal. "Clara, you owe me an explanation. Why would you give my rival your songs? You knew he was my enemy." I tilted my head. "Why would I owe you anything? I just gave my songs to someone who deserved them." "You ruined me," he shouted. "You knew those songs were mine. Were they?" I snapped. "Because in our last life, you used my songs, claimed them as your own, and still had the audacity to act like I was the one holding you back. You erased me from your career, like I was a footnote." His lips trembled. "You're doing this to get revenge on me, right?" I laughed bitterly. "I'm not that petty. I just don't think you're worth it." The audience gasped again. Ethan's jaw clenched. "You think I need you to succeed? Watch me." He turned to the judges. "I have other songs. Real originals. Let me keep competing." The judges looked at each other, uncertain. Ryan and I exchanged a look and nodded. "Let him sing," Ryan said calmly. "But not with the golden mic." The host stepped forward and yanked the mic from Ethan's hand. "You don't deserve this," she hissed. "Get a normal one." Ethan took it, but his hands were shaking. His arrogance cracked. His voice faltered. The crowd, once full of praise, now booed him off the stage before he even started. "Plagiarist," someone screamed. "Get off." Ryan raised a hand, silencing the room. Ethan tried to sing, but the first note was off. The second was worse. He stuttered, flinched, and forgot half the lyrics. His pitch was all over the place. The audience groaned. Some even turned away. Without my songs, Ethan was just another mediocre dreamer. He wasn't bad, but he wasn't brilliant. And tonight, brilliance was the bare minimum. He stopped midway through the second verse, his voice cracking. He stared at me, begging for something: sympathy, forgiveness, salvation. I gave him none. Ryan stood in front of me, blocking his view, like even Ethan's gaze wasn't worth my time. The legend of Ethan Morgan was over. The only legacy he'd leave now was as a plagiarist and a fraud. People would remember his name, but not for his music, for the scandal, for the fall. As Ryan slipped his arm around me and kissed my forehead, I smiled. But he whispered, "Don't smile at him. He doesn't deserve it." Possessive, dramatic, and annoyingly handsome Ryan Carter was the kind of man Ethan could never be. Later that night, I told the host the truth. The golden microphone belonged to my mother, Isabel Bennett. After a few calls and stunned apologies, it was returned to me. I cradled it in my hands like a long-lost heirloom, feeling its weight like closure. That night, I reclaimed not just my past but my future. Ethan Morgan? He was officially done. After Ethan Morgan's spectacular humiliation at the competition, the entire city lit up with gossip like wildfire. The media went wild. Headlines called him the fallen star. Netizens dubbed him King Copycat, and even the underground music forums I used to hang around in were tearing him apart. It would have been a lie if I said I didn't feel satisfied watching it all unfold. I mean, how often do you get to see the guy who betrayed you, used you, and tried to kill you get roasted by the same stage that once crowned him? But while everyone else was busy turning his fall into a meme, I was focused on something else: me wedding. Ryan Carter had been glued to my side ever since that night, practically hovering with every breath I took. He'd proposed in 5 different ways before I even finished my morning coffee the next day, and after the 5th ring, I finally caved. The man didn't just sing love songs, she lived them. Within a week, the entire city knew we were engaged. Some people were happy for us, others were bitter or skeptical, but we didn't care. Ryan had always walked through life like he had nothing to prove, but when it came to me, he was annoyingly extra press conferences, fan posts, even a massive billboard near Central Square that said, "I'm marrying the girl who writes my soul." And somehow I didn't hate it. He had a big concert the day I went to try on wedding dresses alone, and I remember feeling this eerie sense of peace until I walked out of the dressing room and saw the last person I ever wanted to see again. Ethan. He looked like hell. He was still wearing that same suit from the night of the competition, like he hadn't changed or even slept. His hair was a mess, his eyes sunken, and for a split second, I thought he was just a crazed fan who got lost in the boutique. But then he looked at Mirelle. I looked and rushed over like he'd been waiting for this exact moment. "Clara," he breathed out, voice cracked and hoarse. "This is the biggest bridal shop in the city. I've been waiting here for 3 days. I knew you'd show up." I froze, holding the fabric of the gown in my hand like a shield. "What the hell are you doing here?" "Don't marry Ryan," he said, eyes glassy, hands shaking. "I messed up. I know I did. But we can fix this. We can start over." I actually laughed out loud, sharp, bitter. "You're joking, right?" He stepped closer. "Clara, I've sent Nina away. She means nothing to me now. All I want is you. We can do it right this time. I'll sing you right. We'll be the king and queen of music again." I yanked my hand away when he tried to grab it. "Let go, or I'll call the cops." But he didn't back off. If anything, his eyes grew more unhinged. "You and me, weary soulmates. I know you're mad. I pushed you off the roof in our last life, but you dragged me down with you too, remember? We're even. So let's move on. Leave Ryan.
He's not you.
He doesn't know you like I do." I stared at him, disgust growing like bile. "Where's Nina? Does she know you're here stalking me?" His face twisted. "She's useless. All she does is cry and ask what to do. She was never meant to be part of this. Clara, from now on it's just us. Please." And that's when it hit me. He didn't come because he loved me. He came because he realized without me he was nothing. I looked him dead in the eyes and said, "You waited here for 3 days not because you missed me but because you figured out that without my music, you're just background noise." That cut him. I saw it in the way his face crumpled for half a second before he snapped again. He shoved me hard, shouting, "You're still alive, aren't you? I didn't do anything wrong. I gave you fame, glory, everything, and now you want to take it back." My heart pounded, but I didn't flinch.
No, Ethan.
"You gave me nothing. Everything you had came from me, and you erased me from your story. But the universe gave me a second chance, and I finally took back what was mine." He stumbled backward, like my words physically hit him. "Impossible," he whispered. "This was all supposed to be mine." He collapsed to the floor, sobbing like a broken child, clutching his head and rocking back and forth. I checked my watch, saw I was almost late for my final fitting, and walked past him like he was a ghost. I didn't even look back. Ryan found out the next day, always does, and assigned me 2 bodyguards before I could argue. So I kept the guards. But even that didn't stop what came next. Ethan kidnapped me. I woke up in a dim warehouse with my hands tied and a black cloth ripped off my eyes. He was standing in front of me, no expression, just a quiet smile like we were on a date. "You haven't changed," he said softly. "Still full of fire. That's why I could find you so easily." I struggled, cursed, yelled, but the ropes were tight. "Do you even know what you're doing?" I demanded. He chuckled. "Of course I do. No one knows we're here. It's quiet, peaceful, perfect for writing." "You're insane," I hissed. "You think this will make me write songs for you?" His smile faded. His eyes turned sharp. "You don't have a choice. You know I can do anything." I felt my breath hitch, my chest tight. I'd seen that look before, the same look before he threw me into a mental hospital. The same look on the rooftop. He wasn't bluffing. He was deranged. But I also knew Ryan had installed a GPS tracker in my phone after that boutique incident, and if Ethan had taken it from me, there was a chance he still had it on him. So I played along. I nodded slowly.
Fine.
All right. His face lit up like a kid on Christmas morning. He handed me a pen and a sheet of paper, though. He didn't untie me. You're too sneaky, he said with a smirk. You dragged me down once. I won't let you do it again. I rolled my eyes and began dictating some nonsense melody and lyrics, stringing together the most uninspired, generic garbage I could think of. He wrote it all down like it was a masterpiece. We're back, he whispered. This time, nothing will stop us. I'll sing your songs. You'll write our future. I almost gagged. That song wouldn't make it past a high school talent show. But just as he clutched the paper to his chest, proud and glowing with delusion, the door flew open. Ryan kicked him so hard he flew across the room, the sheet music splashing into a puddle of sewage. The ink ran, blurred, disintegrated into nothing. Ethan screamed and scrambled for it, sobbing, clutching ruined paper like it was his last hope. Ryan was already untying me, shaking with fury and guilt. I should have come sooner. I should have been with you. I grabbed his hand. It's okay. You came. That's what matters. We turned to see Ethan still crawling, glaring at us like a wild animal. His voice was hoarse, desperate. Clara, don't leave me. We can still. Ryan stood in front of me like a wall. Ethan lunged, but the bodyguards pinned him before he got close. I'll kill you, Ryan, he screamed. I swear, I'll destroy you. I looked at Ethan one last time and felt nothing. Not rage. Not fear. Just pity. Whatever we had in that first life had died the moment he chose betrayal over love. Now, all that was left was a man unraveling under the weight of the life he could have had but lost forever. After the warehouse rescue, I knew Ethan Morgan wasn't just broken, he was unhinged beyond repair, and the way he screamed Ryan's name while being dragged away by the bodyguards haunted me more than I wanted to admit. Not because I feared him anymore, but because I knew deep down this wasn't the last time he'd crawl back from the grave, and if I didn't take control now, he'd keep spiraling until he destroyed someone or something I cared about, maybe even himself. So the moment I got home, I called my late mother's old friend, Mr. Fletcher, someone with deep roots in the industry, someone who still owed Isabel Bennett a favor or two, and I told him my plan, laid it all out like sheet music, and to my relief, he didn't even hesitate, just said, I'll make the call, and hung up, which told me everything I needed to know. Understood the assignment. And the very next day, Ryan stormed into our apartment with a rolled-up newspaper in his hand, slamming it onto the kitchen counter as I sipped my tea, demanding, Did you know someone actually signed Ethan? They're releasing an album for him? Are they suicidal? And I blinked innocently, reaching for the newspaper like I was hearing it for the first time, unfolding it with exaggerated slowness and scanning the page while muttering, must be luck, which made Ryan narrow his eyes at me in pure suspicion before lunging at me like a kid who just found out his best friend was hiding candy, tickling me half to death while shouting, Clara Bennett, you're hiding something from me, and by the time I could breathe again, I leaned in and whispered a small truth in his ear, something only the two of us would know, something that made him nod with that satisfied, smug smile he always wore when I let him into the deeper layers of my mind, and 2 weeks later, the trap was set, the record dropped, the posters were everywhere. Ethan Morgan's comeback was plastered across billboards with a desperate energy that screamed, please look at me again, and for a minute, I'll admit, the public was curious, some even nostalgic, but it all crashed and burned the moment people actually heard the album because it was trash, not just bland but hollow, the kind of music that sounded like it was stitched together from 100 other mediocre tracks. No soul, no originality, no hook, and worse, the few people who did buy it either returned it or dumped it straight into the trash, some even scrawling words like plagiarist and has been in black marker across the cover and posting it online. So not only did the album flop, but it bombed so hard the record label instantly wanted out. But the contract had clauses, penalties, debts, and before long, Ethan owed more money than he could count, and right on cue, Ryan and I came back from our honeymoon in Santorini, still wearing matching sunglasses and fresh tans, only to have something filthy, broken, and almost inhuman slam itself onto the hood of our brand new Mercedes like some deranged movie scene. And Ryan, horrified because this was the only limited edition model in the country, and he'd gotten it just for me. Jumped out to check for damage, but then he froze, stared hard at the figure, and whispered, "Is that Clara? Is that Ethan?" And I leaned forward to see, and yeah, it was Heimer, what was left of Hema, man missing a leg, an arm, hair matted, body covered in filth and dried blood, crawling toward me with eyes that still held the madness of that warehouse, and my heart didn't race, didn't break. It just clenched in cold realization that he had chosen the second path, the one I feared but expected, and as he dragged himself toward the car, he rasped out, "Clara, Clara, help me, I want to sing again. Please, please write for me, I need you." And then he dropped his knee, well, one knee because the other was gone, and tried to bow, but instead toppled sideways onto the pavement like a broken puppet, still whispering my name, begging for a second chance. "I'm sorry, I know I was wrong, it was Nina. She poisoned me, but she's gone now, I sent her away, she'll never come back. Just give me one more shot, please." And then he started to kowtow, slamming his forehead against the concrete again and again, until the skin split open and blood ran down his face, and I just stood there, staring, unmoved, because this wasn't guilt or redemption, it was desperation, raw and selfish, born not out of regret but of survival, and Ryan could see it too because he stepped in front of me again, like always, and guided me gently but firmly back into the car, shielding me as if even Ethan's voice might stain me, and as the doors shut, I saw Ethan dragging himself after us, screaming, "Please, please don't leave me." But Ryan hit the gas, and we vanished before he could reach the tires, and when we got home, I finally made the call, the one I'd been avoiding, to confirm what I already suspected, that after his album tanked, Ethan didn't just go bankrupt, he spiraled deeper, burned through every bridge, begged Nina to come back just so he could sell her off to settle his gambling debt, and when that money ran dry too, he gambled again, lost again, and ended up selling the last thing he had, his own body, until a loan shark finally snapped and left him in the gutter, maimed, discarded, and somehow still convinced that if he found me, everything would be okay. But I had tried in a past life. I had begged, written, sacrificed, died for him, and in return, he broke me over and over. So no, I didn't feel sorry, just resolved, because I gave him a chance to leave. I'd even had Mr. Fletcher planned a boat ticket to Eugene in his hotel room as a final act of mercy, a quiet way out, but instead of boarding it, he tore it in half and chose the casino instead, and now he had nothing but ashes and empty songs. And as I looked across the kitchen to see Ryan stirring soup for me, wearing an apron over his concert clothes and smiling like he'd just won the lottery because I was safely home, I pressed my hand over my stomach where our child grew and whispered to myself, "Thank God I didn't make the same mistake twice." After what happened with Ethan, you'd think that was the end of it. Had karma finally caught up, that he'd disappear into the shadows of the industry he once burned bright in. But people like Ethan don't vanish quietly. They cling, claw, crawl through the ruins of their own making like they're owed something. And even though I knew deep down that he had chosen this ending with every selfish step, part of me still needed closure, something final, something irreversible. So I made one last call to Mr. Fletcher to confirm it all. How after Ethan ripped up that boat ticket, after he sold Nina Collins to settle his casino debt, after he lost his leg and arm and still begged for a chance to be a star again, the label blacklisted him across the entire industry, and the whispers about him weren't even angry anymore, just tired, like people had run out of outrage and replaced it with apathy, and yet, like clockwork, he kept showing up on the fringes of my life, at the edge of parking lots, outside performance venues, leaving smeared notes written in half-dried blood and cigarette ash, sometimes with torn-up lyrics, sometimes with apologies that made no sense, all scrawled in that familiar handwriting that used to pen love letters and now only screamed madness. And Ryan Carter, bless him, tried his best to keep it all away from me, shielding me with security, firewalls, private entrances, like he was guarding a palace and I was some fragile queen. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I was exhausted, not by Ethan's chaos, but by the pieces of myself he used to own, the ones he thought he still had a claim to. And one day, while Ryan was rehearsing and I was sitting backstage running through some new melody ideas, a staffer came in and whispered that someone was causing a scene outside the building, and the moment I heard the name, I didn't even flinch, just stood up, walked to the window, and looked down, and there he was again. Ethan Morgan, barely recognizable, clothes hanging off his bones, one pant leg pinned where the prosthetic should have been but wasn't, hair sticking out in greasy clumps, face blotched with sunburn and rage, and in his one remaining hand was a sign, shaking violently in the wind, that said, "Let me sing one last time," and next to it, written sloppily in red ink like fake blood, were the words, "Clara, I'm sorry," and for a moment, I couldn't tell if I was looking at a man or a ghost, because that wasn't the Ethan I used to know, not the boy from the fishing town, not the rising star I once stayed up nights writing songs for, not even the cold-blooded opportunist who shoved me into a psych ward and tried to erase me, but something else entirely, a shell, a warning, a monument to what happens when ambition rots, and I felt no pain, no ache, just an eerie stillness, like the wind had stopped breathing, and I knew right then that the universe had nothing left to say to him. And as I turned away, ready to walk back to my life, one of the staffers said something that stuck with me. "You know, he used to be beautiful," and I didn't answer, because I didn't want to tell her that beauty built on lies never lasts. But fate, oh, fate always has a long memory, and just when I thought it was over, that nothing could surprise me anymore, Ethan found a way to claw back one final time, not with threats, not with violence, but with a public stunt that made even the most jaded press look up registered for an open mic contest at a local underground club known for raw talent and redemption stories, and somehow, despite being banned by every major venue, he slipped through a loophole and got on the list. And I only found out because someone anonymously sent me a video clip the night it happened, and curiosity got the better of me. So I watched, and there he was, on a tiny stage with a cracked mic and maybe 20 people in a room, some half-drunk, others just bored, and he was sitting in a metal chair, one leg gone, one sleeve hanging limp, staring at the crowd like they owed him everything. And when the music started, I instantly recognized the melody. It was mine, one of the very first songs I ever wrote for him in the old timeline, never released, never published. Just something I'd hummed in the stairwell of our high school when I still thought love could fix people, and he sang it with a voice so hoarse, so ragged. It was barely music, more like a confession dragged over broken glass, and the room didn't cheer. When he finished, they just stared, like they weren't sure if they'd witnessed art or insanity, and when no applause came, Ethan looked straight into the camera, the one filming on a shaky iPhone, and said, "Clara, I still love you." And the clip ended, and I sat there staring at my screen for a full minute, numb, unsure if I felt anything at all, and then I deleted the video and got back to work, because while he was out there chasing ghosts, I was building a future. And the next morning, Ryan surprised me with an ultrasound appointment, and I saw our baby's heartbeat flicker for the first time, and something in me snapped into focus, not rage, not trauma, but peace, the kind that only comes when you know you chose the right ending, when you realize that survival isn't about who hurt you, but who stayed when everything else fell apart. And that night, I held Ryan's hand under the soft glow of the nursery lamp and whispered, "We're going to be okay," and he smiled like he believed me. Before I even finished saying it, and we didn't talk about Ethan anymore, not because we were pretending he never existed, but because he no longer mattered, not to me, not to us, not to the future we were building from scratch with real music, real love, and the kind of truth no one could ever steal, plagiarize, or bury. You'd think after everything that happened after the betrayal, the rooftop, the rebirth, the humiliation, the kidnapping, the begging, and the blood, Ethan Morgan would finally vanish for good. But the truth is, people like him don't die out like a passing trend. They just linger, fade from the stage lights, but still haunt the curtains. And though he stopped showing up in person, there were still whispers, still ghost-like sightings in back alleys, still anonymous letters I'd catch Ryan tearing up before I could read. And even though I told him 1,000 times that I didn't need protecting, I understood that this was how he loved, completely, fiercely, like a man who'd found something irreplaceable and would rather burn than lose it. And maybe I wasn't used to that kind of love, not after everything I'd been through, but I let myself lean into it, let myself believe it was real, because this time, it was. And not long after that, our baby was born, a little girl with my eyes and Ryan's impossible dimples, and I named her Melody, because she sang before she could even speak, because the first time I held her, all the noise in my head, the regrets, the old songs, the guilt, the ghost of Ethan's voice just fell silent, like someone had finally written the right ending to a song that had been off-key for too long, and Ryan cried more than I did, which didn't surprise me, because this man, this arrogant, protective, annoyingly perfect rock star, had been waiting to build a family since the moment he fell for me, and now that he had it, he wasn't letting go, not for anything, not for fame, not for legacy, not even for the past. And as Melody grew, so did our life, quiet but full, small but bright. And I kept writing music not for revenge, not for recognition, but because I still loved it, because it was the only language I ever truly understood. And though I never released anything under Ethan's name again, I kept one file locked away, a simple, unfinished demo from the very beginning of it all, something I wrote back when I still believed Ethan Morgan would love me back, and every once in a while, I'd open it, not to hurt myself, not to mourn, but just to remind myself of how far I'd come, and how easy it is to lose everything when you put your name on someone else's dream. And then one morning, just after Melody's second birthday, I got a call from an unknown number, and when I picked up, the voice on the other end was unfamiliar but hesitant. "Miss Bennett? I'm calling from the hospital. We found your contact listed as next of kin for a patient, Ethan Morgan." And for a moment, I didn't speak, didn't breathe, just sat there blinking at the nursery wall while Melody hummed a made-up tune in the corner. And when I finally said, "I'm not his family," the nurse replied softly, "He didn't have anyone else." And I could hear something fragile in her voice, like she wasn't just delivering information but a final plea, and against every instinct in my body, I told her I'd come by, not because I owed him anything, but because this was the coda, the final note in a long, tragic ballad that needed to be resolved before I could close the book. And when I arrived, the hospital wing was quiet, tucked in a corner reserved for people who didn't expect visitors, and the moment I stepped in, I barely recognized him. Was thinner than I remembered, face sunken, skin like paper, the kind of man who'd already left this world in spirit even if his body hadn't caught up yet. And when his eyes fluttered open and landed on me, there wasn't madness anymore, just tiredness, like a song that had been sung too many times without applause. And he smiled weakly. "You came," and I nodded but didn't move closer, didn't reach for his hand, just waited. And after a long silence, he said, "I thought if I sang loud enough, you'd come back." And I replied, "You weren't singing, Ethan, you were screaming." And he coughed a little laugh, like even he knew it was true. And after a pause, he asked, "Do you hate me?" And for the first time in 2 lifetimes, I answered without hesitation, "No, I just stopped needing you." And that, more than any insult, made him close his eyes for a long time, like it hurt worse than anything I could have shouted. And when he opened them again, there were tears, not dramatic ones, but the kind people cry when they finally understand they were the villain in their own story. And with what little strength he had left, he whispered, "I wanted to be great, I just didn't know how without you." And I didn't answer, because there was nothing left to say. And when he fell asleep again, I stood, looked at the man I once loved, the boy I once saved, the shadow I once feared, and walked out without looking back, because some people deserve closure, but not access. And on the way home, I stopped by my old studio, dusted off a piano, and finished the song I had locked away for years, gave it a proper ending, not as a tribute to him, but as a goodbye from me. And when Ryan heard it, he didn't ask who it was for, just wrapped his arms around me and said, "You're free now." And for the first time, I knew he was right, because the past was no longer a weight I carried. It was just part of the melody that led me here, to a life I built with my own hands, with a man who chose me, with a child who carried our future, and with a voice that was finally mine. And this time, no one could take it away.